Okay, welcome, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. Running late here. This is Thursday, April 23rd, and we have with us ADS, Agency of Digital Service, as well as DOC. With us, I'm going to turn it over to both of you, whoever else is here to speak. But if both of you could identify yourself for the record, it'd be great.
I'm Denise Riley Hughes. I'm the Secretary for the Agency of Digital Services. And for the record, I also have a landline.
Kristen Calvert, Deputy Commissioner of Corrections. I'm going to be Secretary's voice if it suddenly escapes her completely.
I'm not sick or contagious. No,
Hopefully not, although a couple days off.
lost my voice. I think they've had a lot of testimonies this week.
Wonder why.
Technology's exciting. So, we can start in the way back machine, or we can kind of talk about where we are at here in the now. When, in my lens, when you are looking at Wi-Fi, so we are underway with a network modernization project across the state right now. And that network modernization is touching 300 plus state office buildings. And we have a wireless first approach to that. When we look at correctional facilities, it's not the same thing. It's not like putting Wi-Fi up at the State House or putting access points places. There is a series of activities that have to happen. And I know that we had an assessment done when Commissioner O'Donnell was here, where there was a heat map done on a network assessment of where we would potentially need access points. What was missing in that heat map is what are we actually trying to do? And so there's a couple of other assessments that need to take place. And based on the planning that we've been working on, we will execute those over the next couple of weeks. We will have them completed through the summer, and we will have all of the numbers that we need for the budget request. And we will have everything completed before session starts next year. We're going to inform the governor's budget starting in at the end of August, beginning of September. So we'll have all that data there. The reason why I say we need to be methodical about this, you've got a need for a facilities assessment. We have BGS in the room, so there are BGS components to that, which is where are the wires going to go? Where can they safely be put? One of the things that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts did when they put Wi-Fi in a couple of their facilities is they thought it would be a good idea to run the cables in the same pipes that they heat the building in. So why they were always replacing those cables, it wasn't planned and thought out. So something that would be a very simple project has turned into a significant unplanned expense for them over time. So we don't want to do that. We want to get it right. And so that's one of the aspects. The other one is a security assessment. Turning on Wi-Fi is great. What are you connecting to the Wi-Fi? Do you want to introduce new devices? How are you going to manage those devices? And while any technology company can come into the state and say, look at our shiny, bright new thing, making sure that there's policies in place, not necessarily legislative policies, but operational policies at each of the facilities where you can take the equipment, where you can't take the equipment. And also you're dealing with HIPAA data. You're dealing with sensitive information, you're dealing with CGIS data. So these networks have to maintain a level of heightened security that you wouldn't necessarily see in a building like this. So that's not been done yet. And that's the work that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks and into the early parts of the summer, so that the assessment results will be in place July, August timeframe, so that we'll know exactly how much it's going to cost. If I go and say it's going to be $3,000, we're going to put cabling in there, we're going to throw up a bunch of access points, you will have absolutely nothing to connect to the Wi-Fi, except potentially contraband devices or maybe tablets that the residents have in the building. So I don't know if you, I equate this to like just a more consumer-based experience. Is if any of you have children that have ever used PlayStation or Xbox and you have Wi-Fi, and I'm saying no, okay. I have two who like to play on different machines. If the access point for the wireless is in one part of the house
Mhm.
and you put the device in the other, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And so that's not what you get in the heat map. What you get in the heat map is your building is this number of square feet. These are where your doors are. These are where your cement walls are. This is where you potentially have throughput issues. But what it didn't do is it didn't identify gray space. So what happens if there is now a net new business process where somebody wants to bring a device around to the facility and it stops working when they want to open a door? So those are the types of things that have to be modeled out before we can confidently say, we're gonna put up Wi-Fi. It's a much bigger endeavor than I think what it looks like on paper. So the other thing, the last piece is the policies and procedures assessment. And that's something that I know the department is underway with already. They're working with other states that have done this. They're collecting lessons learned. We're going from paper processes to digital processes. That is not a seamless transition. And the current OMS system is on the docket to be replaced as well. The current system does not have wireless devices that interface with it. So do we plan on that and then flood the new Wi-Fi system without planning to see how many devices are going to be there? So there's a lot of thought and planning that has to be put into this. In the next couple of months, I'm confident that we'll be able to do that. We've got the right folks at the table. We have, over the last 2 years, redesigned the Agency of Digital Services to ensure that departments like corrections have access to the appropriate IT resources within state government. Because prior to this cutover, you had one. And one isn't going to solve this issue. Now, Kristen and her team have access to a number of different resources across my agency.
I have a couple of questions. So you were talking about HIPAA. And you were talking about, particularly it was the HIPAA one,
CJIS,
and talking about the tablets that offenders use. So our contract that we have with WellPath, healthcare provider, they have their own network. For the tablets that the offenders are using, that's a separate network. So is that going to be all integrated within, it's going to be still separate? So where does the HIPAA come in?
it must be physically separate because
I
they're,
It's a HIPAA piece
Where
if
does
you
the
would like.
HIPAA come in? Is it in records? Is it?
Yes, so our vision is that staff would have access to the web-based version of OMS through this Wi-Fi. We're not on that version yet. But in that system, it's unavoidable that some HIPAA information gets entered into the system in case notes or other places. And so while the goal is to not store that, type of information in that system, just inevitably happens through folks' work.
So in our, I'll get there in a second. So in our two tours, St. Albans and then Springfield, there's a lot of issues with those tablets. A lot of issues, and we've contracted out with a company, and they provide the connectivity for the tablets. If we don't continue with those tablets for that company, we try to do it through another system with the new Wi-Fi system, be able to handle that with the security. And why not?
because that network is a physically separate network. That is a CJIS network and very similar to any of DPS's physical locations. Those are separate subnets from the state's environment, and they are running, in order to make compliance with CJIS, they would have to be for staff only. And so you can't just open the door and make it a public Wi-Fi, which is what you're talking about here.
So if we switch companies, if we didn't go with this company, we didn't go with these Wi-Fis, I mean, these tablets, could we use the Wi-Fi we're installing?
No.
You wouldn't be able to at all with any tablet.
You would lose your CJIS compliance authorization.
And you'd lose that with the license for Wi-Fi?
you'd lose it because you wouldn't make compliance with the network. So offenders are not state employees. Talking about a state employee network.
Oh,
State
okay,
employee network is for staff only.
okay,
Open the doors up.
okay, I get that. That makes sense. And that's why if you contract out with your healthcare provider, they won't be able to use the system because they're not, it's only for state employees.
We do have a way to allow contractors, so contractors would be not an employee, they could be authorized, so contractors usually have BAAs or extended agreements that require them to manage and maintain the data, because it's state data, according to the rules. They would be able to have a subset log to that, but it would be governed and restricted to a user account that would be considered to be almost like a quasi-employee
Partner account.
partner account.
Actually, just a simple comment, I guess. Everything you said made sense once I heard it from you. No blame to anybody probably, but it was handy for at least me, can't speak for anybody else, to have heard what you spent a mere 10 minutes explaining maybe a year ago. It would have, for me at least, it would have kept my mind from speculating and going in circles about why we weren't doing something. And maybe it's just me that feels like I understand your explanation and still want to see us moving forward. And I have no way to know if we're going as fast as we should or shouldn't. Think worth that, but the explanation was helpful. I just wish I had it a year ago.
I think the work of the committee is also helping move this along.
Yeah.
Appreciate what you guys are doing.
Can you just articulate for me, what is different or what is additionally needed in our correctional facilities from your typical state facility, right? So as I picture, the work you're doing that expands Wi-Fi use across state buildings is one thing when we're talking about even the State House, right? But we're talking about both a workspace and a living space. So how are you planning to improve Wi-Fi capacity in our correctional facilities for both the state employees that you just mentioned, as well as the folks that live there? Or whatever that might be, right? Right now it's a tablet use, for accessing Netflix, accessing perhaps down the road, phone calls on the tablet, that kind of thing. So do you understand my question?
I do. And for this particular project, I'd like to separate the two. And if we look at what's happening in the facilities right now, just from a facility standpoint, there are 6 different network providers that are coming into, I'm going to call it the closet, because that's what it is. It's a network closet. Each one of those is running a different thing in there.
Yep.
One of them is managed through ADS, and that is the wired network to a couple of handful of devices. There's another one that's judiciary. There's your wired for the Zoom
For the arraignments.
arraignments, right? There's another one, which is the third-party organization that's providing both the network and the tablets to the
Incarcerated.
I'll call them residents, to the folks living there. And so we do have, that's a physically separate connections for each one of them.
Yep.
We need to maintain a physical separate connection. And so if we want to have an expanded offshoot to say, let's also look at how we improve the current contract that we have. Are we holding the vendor accountable? Are they meeting the SLA in terms that we've committed to and that they've committed to in contract? I think that is not tied to this, but it's something that we should absolutely be working on. I would love to make sure our vendors are doing what we're paying them to do, but not hearing that it's happening or that it's only certain facilities. That's a conversation that you and the field director can be working on. So what I'm hoping is going to come out of these 3 assessments is that we're not gonna call it a Wi-Fi project. We're gonna call it basically digitizing the workforce or whatever it may be, so that we can
Okay.
give them access to.
And I'm interested in that because I want things to improve for the correctional officers who are doing their rounds. I want things to improve for WellPath staff who are possibly wanting to do their evaluations in other places, right? I also wanted to improve for the folks who live there. Let me give you a scenario and a couple different things, and I'm curious to know how seamless this would be, how possibly seamless this could be for the user, the inmates. So right now, they go to the education building to do their high school education, their CTV interactions. It's my understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected on this, that stays within that silo, within that location in the building, that it's not necessarily possible for, let's just do a CCV class, for the inmates to then go back to their living space and continue to engage with the learning that started in this silo. It's important for me that that happens. But they also might want to stop doing their homework and make a phone call home on a no-cost calls contract that I've put in place with my legislation, right? So they're going to stop doing their CCV interaction, and they're going to say, you know what? I'm kind of stressed out right now. I'm going to call somebody who is supportive for me in these minutes, and they immediately go to a phone call or a video call. Is that a fair conceptualization of what, is that a realistic sort of vision for what we can do in 2026 for people who are incarcerated? And what would it mean for, like, are they hopping off of one network onto another one to do that, to go from the CCV network to the communications network?
I think that's definitely something that we'd like to look at also, to expand those networks into the rest of the facility. I think we would keep the devices they use kind of isolated to those networks. I think Secretary was correct in saying, like, it's not part of this project, but I think it's a curb cut effect and something we would evaluate maybe in tandem unofficially, but something we definitely want to look at maybe in a phase 2.
If I wanted to be part of this project and we put that into the capital bill,
Yeah.
how clunky would that be for you?
It'll be the first IT project in the capital in years.
Yeah.
That's fine. I don't mind being new and unique.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'd have to connect back with the team and try to incorporate it, figure out how we would incorporate it in the project and what assessments would be needed. I think the assessment piece would be key, as I've learned through this new process, because I think it'd be similar, but an additional set of evaluations we'd have to do to see what.
And there's no
like.
plan to do those evaluations right now?
Not at the moment. We've been
Okay.
focused on the staff component.
Gotcha.
However, though, based on the scenarios that you just brought up and saying that you have 2 facilities where the tablets and the Wi-Fi aren't working properly, that's something we can action today.
My guess is that it's more than 2. That's a guess.
Yeah.
Two facilities.
Right.
Yeah,
What is
I
it?
got my hands on them yesterday. It's not
Was- Yeah, understood. One of the things that I would also, as we're looking at the business process changes too, and this is something that we work with each of the agencies on, what's your business continuity plan? And that's why I want to go back to
What's your
the
business what?
business continuity plan.
Oh, okay, continuity.
So I'm going back to that landline concept. What happens when
I was just
there's no
teasing.
power? No, I think it's great, because what happens when there's no power?
Right.
And what happens when there's no this? There
Yes.
will absolutely be an interruption in service at
Yes.
some point in time. And so that's why we look at uptime and what do we find acceptable for uptime? There's an uptime component in the SLA with the current vendor and making sure that we're managing that contract to that uptime. If not, there's either monetary or service-based reimbursement to the state when they don't meet their
Sure.
SLA. And so with what you're describing, I think that we could take some action now in those environments, especially because that contract changed over hands.
Yeah, about a year ago.
Yeah, so now is a good time to do some oversight.
But in
assessment.
my scenario, which is in the future, that transition from CCV usage of the system to a personal phone call usage of the system, does that require 2 different pads?
I think we would still have 2 separate networks
Yeah,
And they would have approved for each network just to maintain CJIS compliance, and just ensuring folks aren't using one network or device to access another
Yeah.
network.
It would be a matter of evaluating that throughput of how if the CCD network is only available in this space, but throughout the rest of the facility, there's another Wi-Fi network, let's call it a guest Wi-Fi.
sure.
As long as their tablet has the capacity to do a cutover onto that, or they can manually shift over to that while still being able to access the CCD apps. I don't think that those apps are on the tablets today.
No.
So it would just be a matter of a policy and procedure change and whether or not they can adapt and accommodate that switch over. But that would be separate from what we're talking about for correctional officers and for staff that are in the building.
Yeah. One more final question. Kristen, do you know if this is happening? How far behind is Vermont in this?
In
Maybe-
Wi-Fi? Or for
Or
staff
just-
use or,
That sort of scenario that I talked about, where somebody who is incarcerated
yeah,
has a more seamless sort of,
process.
yeah, like, let's
Yeah.
continue my example of doing both school and communication. How far behind are we?
Yeah, it varies greatly. In my kind of preliminary conversations with some other colleagues in New England systems, we're several years behind Maine. Connecticut is getting that on board, but having some issues. So they're kind of in the process with, I think, 5 of their facilities almost ready to go. I only know Rhode Island has staff use Wi-Fi. I don't know what the education piece of that looks like, but I can incorporate that in my conversations. So.
And from a technology standpoint, so we get to, I always say, be in everybody's business, so we know what's going on in each of the agencies and departments. But from a technology standpoint, when I speak with other states, we're actually on the early curve. Even if in our region, we feel like we may not be on that
Specific threat.
specific fractions. We are compared to the United States footprint, we are still on the early curve of that. So we're ahead of many other states.
Thank you.
Just make sure I understood correctly. So it's one of choice questions. I think you answered. You can be on 2 Wi-Fis at the same time.
At the same time, if your device is ready to pick up those Wi-Fis,
So you'd sign off one.
device is capable, it should cut over to that new Wi-Fi if it picks it up of where you are.
So if I was on CCD and then I wanted to go and communicate.
As long as the tablet,
Yeah, yeah. I get that.
recognizes it, yep.
So you're still saying between now and January, you're still in the planning stages. So that come at the end of the year, there'd be nothing, nothing would be installed, but you'd be able to come back with, this is how we're gonna move forward, this is what we need for equipment. This is the dollar amount. And the planning is all happening within ADS.
It's a partnership. Yep, and
We
we'll
had
live
a
in
partnership
BGS.
last year and it didn't seem to go anywhere, so we're a little nervous.
That's fair, and I think to speak a little bit to that, ADS has really come to the table this time and allowed us to really evaluate the system more thoroughly. I don't know if we had that in the last time that we started those evaluations, but they've done some restructuring that have really dedicated more resources for us to be able to do this correctly rather than just dropping it in, which I think seemed to feel different from this experience. So I think we're definitely on track and have enough folks to be able to accomplish this by early fall.
Have you read the language in the current draft of the capital bill for the
Yep.
monthly report backs to joint
I have.
forces? Have you,
Yes.
Secretary?
The 250K.
No. it's
No, I think it
language.
was right at the end. There was a ask. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that still feels,
I think that's pretty aggressive. We don't provide monthly reporting to anybody.
again, I'm not too worried about
Yeah.
coming off as aggressive on this, but
It would be,
Explain how justice oversight works. We want to have our first meeting, maybe June, depends when we adjourn here. It's only 1 meeting a month. It's only 6 meetings between June and July and the end of the year. That's how it operates.
I think it would be feasible given we want you to be able to see marked progress. So if we are doing assessments, we want to make sure that the staff and the resources have the time focused on getting those assessments done. That output of the assessment will be done by the end of August. So if there is a meeting that you have in that August, September timeframe, I don't want to make any, any overcommitments, but I don't see why it doesn't make sense to share the results of that assessment. We're not going to come forward with a budget ask,
Sure.
but we'll at least share with you the data that's been collected, the risks that have been identified, and the plan that we have to mitigate those risks to get things going and started and kicked off as soon as possible.
The Joint Information Technology Committee need to be in the loop as well. Because they
I'm
meet.
sure they will want to be.
They would need to be in the loop as well.
The money, so there's no funding in the IT mod fund, which is what John Tuck oversees. So they may want to be involved just to have a visibility of oversight, but my ask would be that the committees work together and that you have a very strong involvement in that process, because this is an area of expertise that you all have. The technology is going to be the easy part here. It's how we utilize it. What are the business processes? What are the improvements? We just talked about it at the press conference too, the impact to corrections officers and the vacancy rating right now. There's got to be some outcomes associated with what we're trying to accomplish, that it's far more than Wi-Fi, that those measures are going to be things that over time we will start seeing improvements on because of the work that's being done.
Yeah, just hoping you can talk about the funding a bit. The letter we got from Sarah Clark said the administration's been working with the broadband board to assess whether there would be some possible funding for that. So if you have an update.
There is no funding available for this, primarily because it's in the building and it's for staff use and not for the incarcerated population. The last time we went to the board, it felt like that was kind of the tipping point as far as if they could fund it and if it met the criteria.
So we should not rely on that?
Probably not.
Okay.
I don't think at this point.
And you agree too?
I don't
I don't rely on the broadband board.
And, I'm sure the assessment that we'll get before next January is going to talk about timelines and everything, but could you, what's the best case scenario on this type of stuff that
I would
because the
say-
timeline with the legislative, then we got to get the money in the next capital bill? Yeah.
My goal was to have Wi-Fi funding secured next session, and then we start once that funding is secured. So July 1
Would you be able to start some construction, some of that in January? You have the planning,
There's a possibility.
so you need
yeah,
some money.
there's funds
So you would need some money up front right now.
to make that
To
possible.
make that possible.
You would.
Do you have a ballpark figure what that would be?
We only have those very preliminary and incomplete quotes at this moment, which was right around 3 million, but that didn't factor in some variables.
So it would be a matter of how much you would need from January until
Right.
June, which would be a lot of the prep work that would need to happen. So I would not anticipate.
Could you go back and refund,
zeros.
figure that out? Is it 1 million? Is it 1.5 million? Is it 500,000? That you could actually start doing some installations from January, or if you finish earlier, you could start even earlier.
Potentially, yeah, we have a meeting on May 6th to start mapping all of this out, and we could prioritize that request.
You can hold it before May 6th. No, I'm looking at.
Yeah, I know your
I'm looking at
calendar's
calendar
running out.
For our legislative session, because we're gonna be down in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
Or 6.
Oh,
Um,
You want me to flip it?
No, I'm thinking, I mean, if you could do it a little earlier than that to give us a ballpark figure would be very helpful.
Right.
Because we'd like to get you started, and we can put money in this current fiscal year to get you started.
Just curious. So the 3 million we've been talking about for a while, is that my understanding had been is pretty much the total cost, but now you're shaking your head because that's what I thought I just heard from you is like, no, that's
That's
not.
what we thought it was until
Yeah.
we did a deeper dive with
That's probably-
ADS and we
Okay.
realized we had to do some of these assessments. and
Roger.
things. We also need to make sure we bring in BGS to this, so that will affect the timeline as well.
How much more than 3 million?
This one.
It would not be fair for me to give you a number right now, but it would be significantly more than that.
I just
You'd
want,
be significantly more, so we just.
If we're talking about the equipment and the wiring, not necessarily the implementation of the wiring, that may cover some of the costs of that, but we are looking at everything else, the devices that need to connect to it, the policy process updates, the security, the sieges, all of those aspects. We would be looking at a per facility cost, not an all up total cost.
Yeah.
And so I would be afraid to give you a number right now. You would,
Yeah.
I'm kicking out.
I definitely understand. The reason I asked, I just want, like, we have heard numbers for other different things and we stuck to them and then found out they weren't accurate. So now that you're telling us, I want to be able to get that number out of my head, no longer think of 3 million and say it's going to be, it's,
You would want to also investigate the likelihood of being able to lease equipment, lease the network devices, the access points, because that would also keep costs down. So if we're not looking at those tangible owned assets, just being able to swap them out over time, that's going to be important too.
thank you.
We have all the options.
Just going back, I'm feeling a real urgency on the tablet issue, you know, from central office to the guy on honors unit, everybody's talking about it. And you can feel the anxiety, you know, in the prisons there. It's such a big staff management tool. So what can we do to help you remedy this, like, as soon as possible?
To help
Yeah.
us, that's a great.
Do we need a new contractor? Is it tweakable? Like,
Just
yeah.
entered into a new
Just in
contract
April, yep.
last year, right?
Yeah,
It's not working, you know? Yeah.
5-year-old, yep, I agree with you there after seeing it with my own eyes and having a couple folks kind of walk me through their experience with it. And there's some major issues, and our team that Krista, who was here last week with me, has gotten refamiliarized, I think, with some of those issues and is diving into it to include more regular correspondence with a contractor, holding them to those the measures that they're supposed to be living up to. And so I don't know what you could do for us at the moment, but I will get back to you for sure.
Okay, because if it's a money thing, it's worth investing in, you know, it
Yeah,
is.
well, it's a
Yeah.
zero cost contract, so it's really more accountability than dollars. And so it makes it complicated to withhold payment because they're not paying us,
Yeah.
or we're not paying them.
The contract, 3 years too?
I would have to verify. We did a little bit longer on this just due to the impact in the system. It's either 5 years with a 2-year extension or something
Is there
along those lines. There's always an out in every single one.
One of the things we heard from the gentleman up in St. Albans and the people down in Springfield within the last 2 weeks was that there's a structural problem with them not each having their own.
Yep.
And I think that has become that it used to be that way and everyone took care of that. Now, when it's not yours, because there's 30 of them or whatever there are, you can break one and put it back in and you don't have to, you're not held accountable for that. So I think that that's a structural problem with the way it was designed now that I think needs to be fixed.
Well, it also doesn't help the morale within a living unit. Because an offender could blame another offender and that can
And that will spiral very quickly, yes.
spiral right up.
February 29 sound like a right expiration date for that contract?
No, not February 29th. Leap year.
No,
There's always,
No, not the 29th, February 2029.
Oh, okay.
that sounds right, but I'll
Okay.
follow up and get you a copy.
there's always clauses in the contract that allow us
Right.
to ensure greater controls and potential termination if needed, so I will be happy to get plugged in.
Great.
Well, this has been helpful. I really appreciate you folks coming in. And we're going to keep working on this. There'll be more conversations, I'm sure, in the next few weeks. So just be prepared. And I might come into a smaller group of people, a large group. But I'm sure we'll be back in touch. But I want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I hope your voice comes back.
Some people did not.
Sorry, no.
He just sent me this.
And this is the AI translation. Okay.
Very, very helpful.
Thank you, dear. Does it confirm?
No, it just confirms what he saw, that it's not him. I mean,
The
it says
The
John. but
whole AI
You're on
calls me.
YouTube.
Oh, sorry.
You're on YouTube.
Thank you.
That's good.
Appreciate that.
We're on YouTube, folks. So now we're gonna shift gears to S-193, our favorite topic. Katie, you're gonna help us. You're gonna make a list of questions, thoughts. Are your two kids still here with that big pretzel?
I lost something. No, there.
The pretzel you lost, right?
The press, they did a pretty good job on those.
They were huge.
I know.
Our big pretzels.
Your stomach's not big enough to handle all that.
You'd be surprised.
Anybody else having Wi-Fi access right now? No, seriously.
Yeah, my stuff is working really slow.
I'm just spinning. Yeah.
You're just spinning?
No, I'm not, nothing's
I
up.
got trouble on my iPad right along, so.
Okay. Shouldn't have played such hardball that last.
Right?
Good for
Yeah, I
questions.
just pulled it from you.
Patrick. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
There you go.
Steve, you have to ask your question.
It's slow. It's slow. I got the same thing. It's slow. Yep, ain't going anywhere.
Cheryl, we're getting set up. Can we think about checking language on the tablets for that last conversation with joint justice and everything too?
We can
Okay.
do like, we'll have to do it in conference call.
Are you connected to Wi-Fi?
No, I finally got it. Okay. Finally came up. Okay.
You're connected. Yeah.
Oh, Katie, what have you got for us? Anything?
I do. Well, good afternoon, Katie McFadden, Office of Legislative Counsel. I put together sort of a very brief checklist. I'll pull it up on the screen. I don't think all of the questions in it are your jurisdiction. But then I'm finding it hard to untangle one piece from the other. For example, if we're not sure the population we're talking about, it's very difficult to know what the physical parameters of a facility would be. So I've kind of included questions that I realize maybe are going to be discussed in other committees.
That might help the other committees as well. Because we've got to work in tandem with our policy committees on this. I mean, it isn't just us making the decisions.
So I'll just walk through this and then we can pick it up anywhere. But the population served by the forensic facility, like I said, I don't know that this is your focus. But issues like what are the alleged crimes that have been committed? What is the person's underlying condition? What is their judicial outcome of their proceeding? Are they NGRI, not competent to stand trial, both? The operation and the administration of the forensic facility, who is doing that? Is it DOC? Is it AHS more broadly? Is it a hybrid of two different departments? Are individuals going to be sent to a program out of state? In terms of the location of a forensic facility, if it's in Vermont, is it in a correctional facility? If so, is it actually within the facility? And if so, how many units are dedicated for that purpose? How are the units divided? If it's just on the grounds of a correctional facility, what does that look like? When we were last together, you were sort of coalescing around the idea of a physical building on the site of a correctional facility, but not integrated into a correctional facility. Or are you thinking it's totally separate from a correctional facility? Would it be a community-based setting? If it's an out-of-state placement, would that placement provide the same services that are being identified in the bill? And what is the standard of care that would be provided? Would it meet the standard of care that you're anticipating would be met in Vermont? Services provided at the forensic facility. what types of services are being provided? Again, this might not totally be your jurisdiction, but will there be competency restoration? What other types of treatment or care are being provided? Secure housing of individuals absent other services? What is the sort of combination of services that's being anticipated? And then who is providing those services? Is it WellPath? Is it AHS or a specific department? Or would AHS or another department be contracting with a totally separate service provider from WellPath? And then, of course, if it's out of state, that would pose some different questions. So these are some of the issues where probably you need to have more conversation. And I suspect making a decision on one, you'll start pulling threads and kind of have a domino effect of kind of logical next decisions to make.
This is very helpful, Katie, because what's going through my mind is what I would like to have come back to us next January. It's a solid plan on something. And the first part of my brain thinking, we have a gap in competency restoration to begin with. Doesn't matter who it's connected with. Doesn't matter if it's connected to folks who have done a heinous crime or not. There's that gap. Should we really start looking at that gap? And what do we put in place as a state for competency restoration? Period. Doesn't matter if you're charged with a severe crime. You could be charged with shoplifting, retail theft. And there isn't anything for competency restoration to begin with. And I wonder if that's one of the plans that the administration needs to come back with us. It's one thought. I don't know where the committee is, but we've heard so much testimony that there's a gap in that. I've heard that from healthcare committee last night. Chair of healthcare committee was upset, feeling saying, well, policy committees have got to deal with that. So that could be one part of the plan that the administration needs to come back to us. That being said, we could, I'm just putting this out on the table for folks to think about. We could look at those qualifying conditions that's laid out in S-193 that judiciary is looking at. Right? Punishable by life, held without bail. If we want to go down the road of a forensic facility to house those particular folks that are highlighted in S-193, with the Agency of Human Services being the responsible entity to provide those services to those folks, excluding being housed in a correctional facility. I think we'd have to be pretty clear that it doesn't just get dumped onto DOC because they're part of the Agency of Human Services. Plan has to come from the Secretary of the Agency of Human Services. This is how we're going to do it. I just want to put that on the table for people to start thinking about this. That makes sense. To tweak it, to change it. I just want to put that would be the parameters. But they have to come back with a real solid proposal, not a study, not a task force, proposal on how we're going to go forward with competency restoration in general, and how they're going to go forward with a forensic facility that the state's going to operate through the Agency of Human Services. And not by default, put it on DOC. Gotta have some language there to prevent that. So I don't know where the committee is, but I'm just putting that out there for food for thought. Rest is yours, you folks. Connor?
I think I'm okay with AHS coming back, I would want to put guardrails in there so that we're not spinning our wheels in the future. I think enough people in this body think the thought of it on an existing or even expanded unit and correction facility is intolerable. And to the degree that if AHS comes back with a plan that has that, we're going to find ourselves in the exact same position. Similarly with who's running it. So I feel like, well, personally, I could get behind something like that if correctional facilities are off the table and DOC is not managing this and give them flexibility to come with a plan that goes around that. I think that moves the ball forward. Something else that I guess is being brought up now. This is really good. Thanks, Katie. It's like helping me think.
Yeah, this is very good.
That doesn't fit, like, yeah, if we're looking at who qualifies for this, do we really need to have this small population, or are people who are not competent to stand trial for more minor crimes, should they get more attention to get them up to speed so they get access to justice as an accuser, as well as the victim gets access to justice? Why is it focused on this? I know it's the security issue, but if the goal is to make sure people are getting access to justice, could it not be a bigger population, which might be a matter of scale that's easier to work with in a way, you know? That's where I'm at.
It's wide open, folks. I'm not,
Isn't that basically what the accountability courts was doing?
No, I think it's totally different.
no,
Yeah.
not at all.
Where if they've got a number of dockets, for whatever reason, they don't need to be, the charges don't necessarily result in life. But they're
Yeah.
saying, hey, we've got an individual here that needs help. Let's get all the people involved and let's figure out what services.
No, I'm talking people who are incompetent. Say somebody like burned down a house or something and they're incompetent to stand trial. That's totally different than the accountability.
I thought you were talking about expanding those involved.
To expand it to more minor crimes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right now it's only
That's my
for
point.
like, potential
But the accountability court, by the nature of it, isn't people incompetent to stand trial. That's what this facility would serve.
Broader than that. That's my point. But they're bringing the services together right away up front so that they're finding out that the person who lit the fire, he is incompetent. He didn't understand that he lit the fire and he shouldn't lit the fire.
I think I'm quite with you, Kevin. I don't
I
understand that.
agree with you expanding those who are trying to help.
Yep.
And so the reason I'm bringing the accountability court in is because they didn't care what the crime was. They saw the level of offenses and said, let's focus on these people quickly and marry them up with the services they need. Just like we're trying to do for those who are incompetent to stand trial and those who may be.
I guess it goes to another bullet of what's the purpose of a forensic facility, right? Because you could say it's two things, right? One purpose could be getting people competent to stand trial.
Right.
The other purpose, which I would like to see, is the treatment of these individuals, right? So I don't think anything in this bill suggests one or the other, more but you can coach someone to be competent to stand trial, but are you really addressing some of the underlying, you know?
That's the whole thing.
So, just so I'm trying to understand what you mean too. Are you just trying, like, I know you said accountability court, but are you using that just as an idea of let's bring all the services together to help
Yes.
these people? Like,
Exactly. Exactly.
I
So
understand.
that when a person's brought in,
I got you.
it's broader than just those who would be resulting in a life sentence. But we do a more holistic look.
That's your mental health court. That's your mental health docket. But that doesn't go in all the courts because it's too expensive. You know, we're watching the spending. So we do have a mental health docket in some of the courts. Yes, we do. But it's not system-wide because of the expense. We can get more information from this year than you have. Well, in a docket for the. But not all of the folks that we're dealing with. It depends how broad that mental health docket is.
Yeah.
Is it somebody with TBI? Is it someone with Down? It's not mental health. We do have a docket for that. Or we did. I know that's out of your hands, Katie. Thoughts? Sure.
Yeah, I land as I often do, very similar to Connor's, with regard to those pretty strict guidelines prohibiting, DOC from being at the helm, prohibiting our correctional facilities from being in place. I also really like the idea of, we kind of keep coming back to this question, or to this problem posed, this is a small population. I don't think it's as small as we claim it is.
Right.
It is when we limit it to those offenses, certainly.
Offenses.
But this, if we build this sort of place, I think the service is going to provide and catch more people that are currently only caught by DOC.
And that's gonna be problematic in some of our policy committees. Expanding, having a facility that's not based in the community, particularly for developmentally delayed folks.
Well, I'm talking about the examples we were given yesterday from Michaela about people that should not, that are appropriately perhaps placed in prison, but that's only because we don't have another place to put them. That's the beyond the 5 or 6 that I'm talking about. The person she described as abundantly excited for Christmas, for
Yeah.
example,
Right.
right? Still committed a crime, but
It's no concept.
right, and is not necessarily a life sentence person. But I think, yeah, I think our numbers, and needs somebody other than a correctional officer checking in with them on a regular basis. That's who I'm talking about
Or
picking up.
TBI person who's fallen through the cracks.
Or-
corrections.
Or SFI that are currently in prison that are not there for a life prison, like, yeah, all of that.
And by the way, not just for the inmate, because as we talked about, a lot of us probably already know. The guard, the correctional officers, et cetera, don't have the skills, the training to deal with this. And how it affects them dealing with issues that they're not necessarily trained to deal with. That there's a big circle, it's a big circle
Train
actually.
facilities capacity
Yeah.
as well.
I'm afraid if we get too big and too large, encompassing too many folks, it's dead on arrival in other places, in committees. It's dead on arrival.
I think it's bigger than 5 or 6. I don't think it needs to get that big. I think we can do that. I think we can start that.
Be a separate facility though.
That's fine.
Right.
Right.
To have a separate facility for 4 individuals?
I'm saying it's more than 4 individuals.
I know.
Yeah.
But so we have to expand it so that,
And we have to acknowledge the fact that this is an investment that we have failed to provide. And to just say our answer to our own failure to providing that investment is to slough them off onto DOC is not appropriate or acceptable, certainly not to me. We're not answering the money question yet. We're saying, let's envision this and let's define this. And then my guess is that that definition, once we're settled, is gonna start talking about the appropriation necessary. But right now, where we are right now is, y'all need to define this, and you need to define it within these parameters, because you're not doing this in a correctional facility, and it's not gonna be with DOC at the end. So let's see what you got. We need the program. We need a forensics program. We don't have one. We're the only state in the country that doesn't have one.
Other thoughts?
Is it feasible that we could do it for a 12 to 15 bed? Because I think statewide, that's probably more realistic. The figures we're looking at, even based on some of the conversations we had yesterday. And it's not this build and they will come. I think they're already, some are already.
They're already here. Yeah.
I'm not, judging or whatever, but I think we've already got the names.
So we are really expanding S-192 beyond those 5 or 6 folks. We're expanding that. Just to be clear. How will that play in our policy committees?
I think for me, like, it would be writing it with the option to expand it when they come back, if they're coming back anyways.
Right.
We'd like some details. I take it to heart when somebody, the superintendent of a facility says, there's 5 people who don't belong here, you know? And that's on us. I think we gotta at least look at other alternatives here for those folks.
To your point, to that point, right, on your point, to your point. I don't necessarily mind if there's something, if this bill moves forward and it with, hey, we're going to do it this way right now. But to have that provision of some sort that says by X date, we do have, we're gonna plan, and by X date, we're gonna have a different way of doing things. That more aligns with what our goal is. I can live with that. I know maybe others can't, but I would like to see us move forward on this particular bill. But again, with the understanding or something in statute that says, but here's where we're gonna go. And that can't be just a handshake. That's just fine. But
Other folks?
Okay. James, you helped me communicate what I was trying to say. Let me try it again. An individual who was prioritized by the accountability court, my simple thinking was the offense wasn't necessarily that egregious, but it's a repeated, they're not getting the message that they can't keep doing this. And so we put them on top of the pile to get them the justice they need. And in doing so, we've tried to figure out what the root cause for that individual was, because now he's back a 5th time for defecating on the sidewalk. They may be a person that should be in this facility because they need help other than just punitive help. They need to, like incompetency, like insanity, they need more than the correctional facility typically can give them. And oh, by the way, we're extracting them from being a nuisance. But in the regular population, they're not getting the help they need. That's I guess what I was trying to say is I'd like to see it expanded past those who just have a life sentence. There's lots of people out there, I'm afraid, that they're just not capable of living in society without being a nuisance, and they end up being in prison because they just keep reoffending.
Can I ask Kevin though, are you suggesting it would be expanded beyond people who are incompetent to stand trial?
I am.
Oh, okay, so that's not as far as I was going.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm suggesting. Instead, if
That's
we're going
good.
to have a separate facility
Mhm.
for these people,
Because I think if you go that route, you could have like a 100-bed facility for SFI population, right?
In a road constitution.
Which, yeah, I don't know.
well, if with the 5 dockets, they find they're not guilty, then they're released. But if they are guilty, after 5 times, they're still not getting the help. They need something more than being thrown in our normal DOC prison, is what I'm trying to say. There's something off. So let's give them what they need to either get better or treat them humanely like we would someone who's incompetent to stand trial or insane. That's where my
But
mind is.
I don't think you can mix the two because then it's not a specific forensic facility.
Right, you can't.
There are some.
it doesn't mean it's not a good
around. I
idea.
mean, I
It's just-
understand exactly what you're saying, but maybe that should be a connection to the mental hospital where but again, the Constitution, if they deem that they don't want to be going, they don't have to go, just like they don't have to take their medication or anything else. And they may think that's a normal procedure, what they're doing, whatever they're doing. So it's kind of like there's this fine line that I get exactly what you're saying, kind of preventative before you get to a point where it's a murder or whatever. But I think you can't mix the two.
You're providing wraparound services for that person, but it's not in an institution. That's what the
Okay, so we're gonna put them out on the street and they're gonna keep reoffending because they're not getting what they need to change their lifestyle.
Well, that is the goal of the accountability court,
Right, because they
Yeah.
provide the wraparound service.
which I like.
but
I like the
if you're-
accountability court.
That's my point.
But
So,
it's different than this, I think, yeah.
understand,
Yep.
the accountability court though is the idea that instead of just saying you're guilty, we're saying we're guilty and we understand why.
They're not saying you're guilty. An
The
accountability,
accountability court does. Sure they
Well,
do.
they-
They either find them,
well, not necessarily. When they first come, when they're coming back, they, for quite a bit that happens is they're not being sentenced at that point in time necessarily, because the community partners would then be reached out to provide community services to that person. And then they would come back later for a sentence. Some of them may be sentenced right then and there, the accountability court, but some may not.
oh, well, no, and the ones that are not fall outside, but the ones that are, I see, they could be a population that would be serviced by this additional facility that we're willing to pay for now.
But they might already be sentenced to an incarceration sentence of 2 to 4 years. They don't need to be in a forensic facility to gain competency because they've already been deemed to be competent to stand trial. That's the difference here. So if they are constantly repeat offenders, at
Right.
some point, they're gonna have a sentence, whatever that sentence may be. And the court can determine, you're not competent to stand trial. They're not gonna be sentenced at that point until there's a competency restoration of some kind. The question is, where does that competency restoration sit? Because right now, we don't have any program for restoration of
But
competency.
if they're a danger to the public, they
That's-
will still be held. Because even though they're incompetent or insane, they're still gonna be held, and we're saying, where are we gonna hold it? Where are we gonna give them the service? Put it that way. I'm not saying everybody that comes before this court or is considered, or, incompetent is going to be found guilty. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that we have a place where those people who that are found either incompetent or insane or repeat offenders and they're just not getting the message, be in this separate facility where they can get the kind of help that they need rather than the general population in some other prison. That's all I'm saying. Instead of just handling 4 people, I think there's a lot of other people that need more help than the DOC generally gives them. That's what I'm saying.
So what their point is though, because I understand where you're going.
Yep.
But that's different than this, and it's so far outside of this scope that it can't be connected. But I get because I think many of us agree that people who need help should get help. And we'd love to see facilities or services that do that. But that's so far outside of the scope of a forensic facility that we should set that to the side before it gets too convoluted. There could be agreement or we're not going to move forward.
I get that.
That's how people are trying to.
And maybe everybody understands why they can't be in the same facility. Because now we're not looking on Medicaid dollars. Vermont's gonna pay for this different facility and gonna provide these extra services that DOC is not currently supplying. So why couldn't they be in the same facility wherever that is? Maybe it's 2 different wings, I don't know. But instead of just building a Taj Mahal for 4 people, there's a number of other people who could use this expanded service.
Under whose custody would they be? Because they'd have to be under state custody.
AHS, that's fine with me. I mean, you're gonna have to trust somebody. If you don't trust DOC to do it humanely, and you trust, I know, I'm using the words, why don't we trust them? AHS, you're gonna trust them? Whoever you're gonna trust, you're gonna have to trust with these people.
Well, so the second part of that, so Mary had mentioned this in her response earlier, a few minutes ago, and we heard it yesterday multiple times when we were talking, is in certain situations with certain people, you can get them to say the state hospital and they can be made to receive medication that they don't want to, right?
Right.
So in some cases, that's the only way you're gonna help somebody.
Right.
But with most people that have some problems, maybe the example of the individual who thought it was Christmas, like he was 5-year-old,
Right.
he's 30, whatever the heck,
Right.
right? You can't do that with them. So you put them in this facility and you cannot force them to go through treatment. You can't force them to go through medication, et cetera. you're not really gonna help them. You're just putting them in a different building and that might make us feel better, but it's not helping.
Right.
So that's the other thing, but that's again, the bigger part I think that everybody is trying to get at is that expands it so far beyond this that it would be dead on arrival and it would never go anywhere. It's not that we don't share the, I think most of us share that moral value, but it's so far outside of the scope of this that it won't, that has to be set on the shelf so we can do this. And then someday in the future, maybe look at that, but but again, the other part, like Mary said, and they said yesterday, only certain people can you make go to treatment. Only certain people can you make go to medication. Without those forced hands, you're not really going to be allowed people.
Right, and whoever those people who the state deems needing to be held, they're gonna be held someplace. That's all I'm saying.
Mhm.
And I can't see us jumping at building $100 million facility for 4 people. So why not have it for 24 people that really need that additional service is all I'm suggesting.
I wonder if I opened it up a bit too much by suggesting adding more population to it. Maybe it would help just for the discussion of this to see what's under our jurisdiction,
Right.
because that may be more judiciary. You know what I mean?
And upstairs. Upstairs. I'm just trying to do a framework here in terms of helping Katie come back with language.
Do you think you have all you need, Katie?
Yeah. So what we have heard, there's no program for statewide for competency restoration. If we did put in slate's blank right now, what would it look like? I think that's an issue that probably has to be resolved one way or the other. What would it look like? That's not our jurisdiction. That's all the other folks, but what would it look like? And then in terms of those folks who are deemed not competent to stand trial, they've gone through a restoration program, whatever that may be, and it's been deemed by the court that they're not competent to stand trial. We're a very small case. Not guilty by reason of insanity, but to get to even that point, they have to be held. So there is a criminal charge. Is it a limited criminal charge? Or do we, or is that broadened a little bit? Come back with a plan. And who operates the facility, with the security of the facility? And who provides the treatment inside that facility? Where is that housed? So that's the broad piece that I just put on the table.
When it comes down to it, and please jump in if I'm oversimplifying this. This bill is not in our jurisdiction for a reason, because it's primarily judiciary, primarily. We've been asked to look at it because right now it contains a corrections component. We are essentially saying, no, it's not going to contain that's our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
We're saying, good with the bill, not in corrections. That's essentially what we're saying. It's that simple. And if you want to define this as only those who are facing life imprisonment, then do that and build your forensic facility, but you're not going to do it in a correctional facility. We're essentially saying no.
This is our recommendation.
Yeah.
If you want to go forward with doing something, then we're not doing it in corrections, but we've put some thoughts out there in terms of what the policy committees could look at. And you could look at a restoration program. You could look at having the Agency of Human, I think somebody has to come back with a real solid plan. And it would be the Agency of Human Services. Come back with a real solid plan next session. Who's going to be housed there? What is it going to look like? Who's going to operate it? And do some language, make sure it's not going to be in a correctional facility or under the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections. I mean, that's basically where we are, right? And also, I think part of that plan coming back, that the agency needs to look at it in the interim, out-of-state placement. For the small amount of folks that we have now. Is that even a possibility? I mean, that's kind of where we are, right?
Absolutely.
So I see our recommendations more subtracting from the bill than adding things to the bill, right? Like,
And that's conversations with our policy committee. So, you know, I think in a broad, I don't even know if it would be language in a bill, but that's the concept I think that we're at in the committee. Right? No way are we doing a correctional
Yes.
under the custody of the Department of Corrections, under the custody of the commissioner. No way is the commissioner gonna be promulgating rules this summer and fall. And maybe we suggest as well a different definition for the forensic facility. It was already out there in Act 37, 27,
Um,
27.
I can't remember, I'll find it.
But we offered that definition out there for a forensic facility instead of the one that's in the bill.
Fall on my sword here. The procedure though, just, we could all agree that we don't want DOC to be in charge, right?
Mhm.
But if the bill comes to the floor and everybody else says that's their will,
It's not going to. DOC because healthcare doesn't want it, human services don't want it, DOC.
with DOC.
And
Okay,
judiciary.
That's how we prevented this, those three committees don't want DOC.
And neither really, judiciary is pretty split. Doesn't have much support in the House for DOC. But we want to move forward with something. And maybe human services doesn't want to move forward with anything because they're really concerned about the individuals with developmentally.
Yep.
delayed,
Yes.
You know, and I don't want, and they're afraid that the way S 193 is currently structured, it's gonna bring those folks in. That's what they're really afraid of.
Just gonna bring a bigger population in.
Right.
Yeah.
DD folks.
Yes.
Katie, I'm gonna ask you a question, because you're so used to working in the whole healthcare DMH. Is it really you, or is it more Jen Kirby with DMH,
More me.
or you? If someone receives a court order for a competency test, they're not in a correctional facility, they've been sent to the state hospital.
Mhm.
And they're there for a period of time. Then they're released. Is there notification of the victim or the community that the person has been released?
Oh, this is a judiciary question.
Is it?
Yeah. It's been proposed a couple times recently, so my thought is no, but I would rather you hear it from Eric.
Right, I mean, we've heard this in joint justice. That information is not public.
Is that a HIPAA? Is that why?
The release of the victim, from the hospital likely, because it means that their medical condition is.
So the community, I'm not just thinking of the victim, the community is not notified. Persons in corrections, they leave corrections, the communities. That's one of, I'm convinced it's one of the driving forces, you could put it under POC. I've said that from the get-go. Plus the other drivers, because if you do any forensic within either River Valley or the state hospital, you could lose your Medicaid. State Medicaid. Because it's forensic. So I think those are the two driving forces. That's just.
There was a proposal to have it at the hospital, and that's why they had to back away from that proposal, because they would have lost a lot of. I mean, the Vermont Psychiatric Care Hospital would have lost all of its Medicaid funding.
Which then it would all be on the states. So. Now, I think those are the reasons why it's in DLC. So. What are the thoughts of the committee? That would be our position as of now? And then see what the testimony is upstairs in Human Services when Brian and. You heard, they're taking any of this, not doing any this week, are they?
I have not been in Human Services, but I know at least last week there was a lot of testimony scheduled. I'm not sure if
For next week?
for last week. I'm not sure if they're continuing to take testimony this week. Healthcare took testimony yesterday. They took a whole afternoon worth of testimony.
And I know that the chair was really upset that we don't have a program for restoration of competency. I don't know how you put that. I don't know what the structure of that. What else do we have up there for questions that we asked?
So population is probably not your jurisdiction. The operation and administration sounds like you're,
The Agency of Human Services.
sounds like you're
State.
finding a solution there. The actual location itself, not just who operates it. Yesterday you were talking about having something not in a correctional facility, but on the grounds of the correctional facility. So that the security could, from the correctional facility could be utilized. Sounds like you're moving away from that, but I'm not certain.
I think that would be an option.
Mhm.
I think that would be an option. There's a couple of facilities that might, a couple or three.
You've talked about possibly an interim solution of sending some individuals out of state. And then the types of services provided. Again, maybe not your jurisdiction, but it sounds like there's a strong interest in competency restoration. It's unclear what other types of services might be available. For example, if it's not somebody who's there for competency restoration, but if they're there for not guilty by reason of insanity.
Mary's on a warpath.
Now I just did the swine law.
We'll get an update. Go ahead, Katie.
Or is the idea of just sort of having a secure place for this person to reside? And then who is providing the service? There has been a conversation about WellPath. Seems like if DOC is not, if these individuals are not in DOC custody, WellPath seems less likely. Is AHS or a specific department providing these services? Chances are they're contracting out for these services with some entity. So some decision around who is actually providing the services.
Is there a way, Katie, you could just help us do a little paragraph or something, couple paragraphs, just to reflect what we just discussed and what we're thinking? So at least there's something that could sort of be presented to the policy committees or in my conversations with the
So
chairs.
sort of like a one pager of not legislative language, but just some ideas that,
This is the concept.
some conclusions that you've landed on. Okay, yeah.
Because I don't know if it will help them. They might just tear it up, throw it away.
It also seems like besides sort of the substance of what you're thinking through, you've been referring several times to this feasibility study. And it seems like there's sort of a tiered approach, like judiciary is going to continue coming up with the mechanism by which somebody can come into a forensic facility, but maybe that doesn't actually take effect until there's a plan that like a plan for the physical structure and location that the General Assembly has signed off on.
Where the qualifying conditions would be. They can set up this structure, but it's not implemented until we figure out how.
In my mind, I'm envisioning that by the time the four committees are done with their work, they'll have a clear idea of who the who is. And you'll know what population would be served, but the actual language that would allow for somebody to go to a forensic facility wouldn't be enacted or operational language until there is a plan for what the physical location and staffing would look like. So it would be sort of a steps, I guess, that we have this language, we know that it will work to get somebody to a forensic facility, but we can't use it until we know what is being used as a forensic facility. Unless there's this interim step that you're talking about.
The out of state. Try that.
Okay, we could also be silent on it.
And for a feasibility study, I want a plan. It's a plan. What's the administration's plan? process.
We're back to the feasibility.
No, I don't want a feasibility study. I want a plan.
Operational time.
Gonna be a feasibility study. What is your operational plan to address this?
That would include operational timeline, estimated costs, staffing.
And by when? By when?
January. January. That could, the real solid plan.
Okay,
Location.
location. Size.
Yeah.
Okay.
And don't forget the competency restoration piece.
Is that separate or is that part of the forensic facility? I hear that you're sort of saying
It's
maybe,
kind of both. I mean, right now, the testimony we received here and then received it in healthcare yesterday, there's no
Mhm.
plan. That's the gap.
Not only is the forensics facility as this is evolving, and maybe this was apparent for folks quicker than it was for me. For folks who have been deemed incompetent to stand trial for the sake of competency restoration, but also then a place for those who have been deemed non-restorable as well as NGRI, right? We're still gonna have to house those folks. So for me, and that's why I don't see this as 5 or 6 people, because out of those 5 or 6 people, there's going to be a number of them. We heard 50% today who are going to be deemed as non-restorable. We're still going to need to house those folks and provide therapeutic treatment for those folks. So this is a growing population. If we're, yeah, it's not 5 or 6 people. It's not a static number. It's a number that's going to continually climb. If we have a place to house folks who have been deemed non-restorable or NGRI, those are going to be long-term residents.
Correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, all of that.
It's really expanding. That's gonna be a hard sell for upstairs.
Housing NGRI and non-restorable,
Be a hard sell.
even if we put a least restrictive component in there.
They're gonna be concerned about the
I know.
ID.
Yeah,
That's their main concern.
even if it's a forensics facility and not a correctional facility. Right? Even if it's a place like River Valley.
Well, we can try. Don't be surprised. I
But
mean, I
then,
may be surprised the other way, but don't be surprised.
but what's the counter then? Is the counter community monitoring?
Yeah, but you know, the IGD folks should be out in the community, because we already have those beds out. That's what
Yeah.
I'm picking up.
you have Act 248, that picks up people who are not competent to stand trial, not individuals for NGRI.
Not NGRI.
It doesn't pick up that population. It picks up not competent to stand trial. But those are residential placements in the community by court order. With
Not
maybe,
necessarily secure residential either.
they're locked
Okay,
for the Act
all right.
248. There's often alarms on the doors and windows. Or like somebody might a bracelet or, you know,
Right,
to
right,
to
okay.
track them.
Yeah, we've heard some of that, yeah.
Are those criminal as well as civil?
I think Act 248, if they're not competent to stand trial, then they're coming through the criminal door.
So if they've been deemed not competent, they can be transitioned out to these beds in the community, correct? This is
With a
a
court order.
court order. Where the court would order them to stay in a correctional facility as well.
I'm not sure how that piece works. I know that there is an avenue by which somebody who has a developmental disability, not competent to stand trial, could receive a placement from a court in a community setting.
Is it just for the IDD folks, the 248?
As opposed to like TBI. I want to say yes, but I'm not certain.
And this is for crimes that don't include a life imprisonment.
I believe it's broader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be good for us to need to do this. If you don't want it, you don't need it. But just a summary of that 248.
You know, there is,
Sean,
I have this document that Dale has on its website. They have a sheet.
248.
Act 248 info.
And is that, so if it's Dale, it's dealing with developmentally
Yeah, intellectual disability.
aging and independent living.
You could probably Google it, but I'm happy to send it to you, but what is Act 248 to? When, why was it enacted? Are there any qualifications on the scope? Who starts an Act 248 petition? What happens if a person is committed under Act 248? Are the rights and status of a person under Act 248 different from those of other persons served by developmental services agencies? What recourse exists if the person refuses to cooperate in treatment? Is Act 248 a life sentence? So it might be useful for you to parse out if you want me to find the link and send it to you.
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And these are for folks who have been charged with a criminal offense.
Well, they were not competent to stand trial, so they have been charged. It's a civil commitment. Let's see. The state criminal court to civilly commit a person with an intellectual disability who is a continuous risk of significant harm to others. They order them into the custody of the Commissioner of Dale. To be committed under 248, the person must have a qualifying intellectual disability and present a danger to others. Typically, an Act 248 petition is started by the state's attorney once a person has been found incompetent to stand trial due to a developmental disability. Next, the court orders Dale to have the person reviewed for eligibility and a support agency is identified. The support agency then develops a support plan with the person. Support funding from the state plan is received and the person is placed on Act 248. Dale may request additional evaluation, etc. What happens if the person is committed? A designated community developmental services agency begins to support the person. A developmental disability services public safety specialist or guardianship service specialist is assigned. This person serves as the commissioner's representative. She works with the agency and the committed person to design an appropriate program that will reduce safety. It provides 24-hour day supervision and residential support, arm's length or eyes-on supervision when the person is outside his or her home, education and day activities, employment support and supervision, respite, individual therapy as needed, group therapy as needed, psychiatric and other medical services, family training and support, a case manager and service coordinator who ties it together. There's more, but
But it's really just for IDD folks.
let me find that document for you.
I just sent it to the,
Oh, you're fast. Thank you.
while you were busy.
Because that's where human services falls on.
Good job.
It's Act 248. That's really their focus.
Mhm.
would be great.
And we're focused on a different cohort, right?
Well, potentially somebody who has a life, who is charged with a life sentence now could be on Act 248. Were this version of be enacted, then there would be, the possibility that somebody on Act 248 would, could be in a forensic facility. That would be another alternative placement likely, and I don't know how that decision would be made. I'm assuming a court would look at what the least restrictive setting is given the person's particular circumstances.
Well, it's going to need to be a lot of conversations here in the next week. And
What's the difference between a dementia, senior citizen living space, forensic state facility?
Well, I mean, you could have some very specific best practices around like dementia and Alzheimer's there for, they have like memory units. We've got one in town and stuff.
Legally.
Oh,
My
legally.
mother couldn't leave her dementia unit.
I don't know legally.
I mean, that's more in a nursing home.
Is that
Well,
the family?
The doctor's appointment?
choice acting on the,
So
It wasn't a
because the
court order.
family, because they had power of attorney, they could
I'm
commit the
assuming,
person there.
I'm assuming that, there wasn't a court order to,
No,
yeah.
court order.
So
She didn't bring any laws
Yeah.
for her safety and others. She's restricted to that location because she's not capable of taking care of herself. in a Responsible manner. No court ordered it.
Did the doctor sign off?
it's a personal family decision.
Right, but
I went through
usually-
that with my dad, same thing.
Yeah, but
Went through
usually,
that with John's mom, same thing. That's a family decision in a nursing home.
right, but
It's the same-
usually,
We're talking about people who are under the custody of the state, court ordered.
I know,
It's a
so there's
court order.
even more leverage because the individual has broken law.
Well, they're in the court system.
Understand? But we're concerned about holding the responsibility of holding an individual and they can't leave. And yet we've got thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are in that situation that are not court ordered.
Those are decisions that a family has made, that a medical
usually with the doctor.
with the doctor. These are situations where we're taking away their the liberty of these folks are taken away by the state, which is very different than the liberty of someone's family member being taken away by the decision of family and the medical profession. That's a very different thing than the state taking away a person's liberty.
I hear you.
And we're responsible here, we're state legislators, and we're responsible for people who are under state custody. We're responsible to make those decisions, who comes under state custody and who doesn't. Hope I'm not off base on that, but that's what we're responsible.
I'm just pointing out that we're trying to deal with 4 or 5 people a year. And yet, and we want to certainly take care of them. What authority do we have to hold them? And there's a lot more authority on that for someone who's been charged with a violent crime compared to my mother. She couldn't leave the facility. And in fact, medications, yes, we were angry when the nurses didn't let us know that they gave her some medication, but so I'm saying, I'm trying to understand the difference. If you look up the definition forensic, it's not, I don't see any clear definition that says insane in committing an act or incompetent to stand trial. It says scientific analysis of a situation for the legal. I'm trying to get a handle on why it's different, is what I'm trying to get a handle on.
Legal forensic,
means criminal justice involvement.
Okay.
it's your legal court system. So Katie, do you have some direction?
It's not gonna be,
It's not fancy, it's pretty simple.
it's not gonna be long and detailed, but I can put something together, and if you don't like it, we can change it.
We can do that next week, check me on Tuesday afternoon.
Maybe, but look. Well, that's this week, let's see. Yeah, Tuesday afternoon looks good if it's early in the afternoon.
12:31.
One, yeah. And
Awesome.
that will work.
Let's see where everybody else is. I know that the 4 chairs are meeting again next week, but it's not till Thursday.
Why are they putting it so far off?
But we tried to do it Tuesday, but there were some conflicts with some other chairs. Couldn't do it. Tried to do it Tuesday.
So they're not really necessarily taking it serious, or just because how they feel about the topic, or
Now we'll see what's on the agenda for human services and healthcare next week. Is there anything, you know? Well, thank you, Katie.
You're welcome. If you want that time, you should reserve it now. I know everybody is doing their schedule right around now.
Yeah. Katie, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You always say it with a smile. You always say, I can do it with a smile.
So before anyone leaves, I'd like to spend a few minutes here going over the committee for schedule next week. Because I think we've been
To help
past
Tate, we can
193
help.
to death. I don't think we want to do any more work on it unless people want to do some work on it. I think we're just gonna wait at this point, we're in a holding pattern. So what else do folks wanna have? I mean, we got all next week. Capital bill hopefully is out of the Senate committee
Today.
today. Tomorrow has to go to approach, has to go to finance, I would think. And then hopefully it's passed the Senate by the end of next week, which is May 1st. And then the following week is conference committee. Got 3 more weeks here.
Better handle.
I almost hesitate to bring this up, but we had discussed maybe trying to tackle the healthcare components of 550, but that brings us back into some depth. And I was not anticipating 193 to be this juicy, so.
Yeah.
But I'd be open to it if the committee is up for it, but I'm also happy to reintroduce that component of it next year.
We don't know what's happening with the bill over there either. And that's my concern. If they're not working on that bill, I don't want to lose momentum.
Yeah.
If folks want to try to schedule time with WellPath to have a more in-depth conversation on the healthcare providers, transgender folks who are incarcerated. Said we were gonna do more work on it.
I think that would be good. No?
Would we be able to get it? Would we be able to get it anywhere to?
Oh.
I mean, it's.
That's right,
always
we do a bunch of
been-
work and they're not gonna, because they have to do it, they have to insert it.
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. That's what
Done.
my fear is. We can do it and I'm willing to do it. Not that it's about me, it's about everyone. But I don't know if then it goes anywhere.
Gina, could you connect with institutions committee over there, with someone over there? Find out if they intend to take it out.
Hi, tell you if that's helpful. They do intend to take it out. Charlie Glizerman from the network is set to testify on it tomorrow.
Oh.
We've had testimony scheduled and it's been rescheduled twice, but the commissioner will be in next Thursday to testify on the bill.
So it might be worth to really bring in WellPath and deal with it, because if they pass it out, we have to be a phone conference.
And we were close to some language. I have another suggestion too.
I don't want to confuse them with offering amendment
Yeah.
until they vote it out.
Okay, yeah.
So I think it
Confuse them.
might confuse them too much. They got a lot on their plate because.
Well, as long as they're taking it up, I think we should take it.
Yeah, so let's see when we can schedule it.
I have another one if you want it. So Haley actually put me in touch with a group called Beyond Chicago Beyond. I met with a woman, Nika, from Chicago Beyond, and their work started with the previous commissioner. And I'll just summarize it briefly by just talking about really bringing a wellness concentration into our correctional facilities, starting with the staff, right? And we heard yesterday, I was really appreciative of Michaela bringing in the passion fatigue that happened with staff. How do we support our staff members through a wellness frame to be more, I don't want to say resilient, but more deliberate about, how are we more deliberate about providing wellness access to our staff, our correctional officers? And then how does that bleed into the population in general, to be a more wellness focus? Am I summarizing that sufficiently, do you think?
Yeah.
Like what they do, like what the
Yeah.
program, yeah,
The organization is made up by a lot of former corrections leaders, and essentially what they seek to do is reduce violence in correctional facilities by enacting policies that recognize the humanity of incarcerated people and staff.
thank you. What she
Would
said.
that be something that we could schedule?
Oh, she's willing to meet the committee and provide like a slide deck. She was a former superintendent at Cook County Jail, in Chicago, and now she's a psychologist. You know,
Yeah, well, if we want to hear that, that would be fine, if you can get my contact info.
They do really good work, and they also do a lot of work around families. So.
Right, yeah.
I'm sure they'll have a lot of interesting initiatives to share that other states have done.
Speaking of family visitation, what's up with kids apart?
I have not checked in on the Northern program recently, but I can ask the folks how it's going.
You know, another piece too, remember there were some folks that were here, formerly incarcerated folks, there were two guys here with the community justice centers. One was from the Northeast Kingdom and the other one was from my area. And we offered that they could come back.
oh, right,
Those two folks who were formerly incarcerated that wanted to really share their experience. Keep forgetting about that, but
I'd be down for that. too.
yeah, I can
Did
give
we get their
you
names?
the contact person on my end that can give the Northeast Kingdom person contact to you too.
Okay,
And try to organize that. They really were looking forward. They were surprised at how welcoming we were. And that legislators didn't have the, they literally said they didn't snub us. They expected folks to be really unwelcoming. So
yeah,
that was nice.
I'm always up for that kind of testimony.
Is there any more to hear about notification, the breakdown of notification, what the limitations are in terms of HIPAA and personal health information? I mean, perhaps we've done all the Vines testimony that we can for the time being, but if you're correct, and I think there's some truth to that being one of the foundational problems that's causing us to consider doing things this way.
You mean the HIPAA with folks who are in the state hospital? So, yeah, I don't know who's. We have to get someone from the agency who's for that.
Yeah, what is the intersection between, right, competency and privacy and HIPAA law and,
Would that be DMH? It's gotta be DMH.
I know that Karen Barber did go to one of the victim notification task force sessions to speak on this topic. So she might be the appropriate person.
But also it's just to know if someone is in the state hospital and then a release, what notification, what information is released to the community on that person's status, right? And what, if it's not allowed, why is it not allowed? Is it HIPAA or what?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we've heard again and again about the problems with notification. What are the limitations there so that we actually know what we're talking about? We're not just guessing at what we can or can't do.
So it'd be Karen, you think?
I think probably, and she can pull in other folks if needed.
She's gone this week, but we can get her next week. We may not be able to connect with her until Monday.
And if it's a simple statement or, here's a link to a paper and forget about it, I don't want to testify, that's fine. But I want to make sure we haven't missed something obvious that we could hear.
So the bills that are over in the Senate. Supposedly the driver's license bill's voted out, but I haven't seen where it's gone.
It was passed by the Senate, it's on the governor's desk.
It's on the governor's desk. Supervisory fees, are they doing anything with that?
They took testimony from us a few weeks ago, and I don't believe that they've circled back to that bill since.
And then the parole board bill, they have an amendment for victim
Yes.
notification. on
They
it.
passed that out of committee today
They
with
did.
the amendment.
Is that the only amendment they did to it?
They actually did make, I think, a few technical changes.
To the parole board bill?
Yeah,
That's set out today, so it'll be on notice tomorrow, so it'll be up. That had to go. Did that have to go to another committee? It did.
There's some money in it. So I think
I
it's
was gonna say, I thought it was a corpse, yeah.
So the only one that's really not being worked on over there is supervisory fees. You could kind of ask.
And I haven't yet.
Yeah, I asked that, right? Okay, so anything else for testimony?
Well, we're still going to see the pen stocks, right?
Oh, yeah, Waterbury.
Right.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
dam.
actually, we could go next Thursday. That was one of the dates they gave us.
Good. Is it a nice day?
Yes.
Let's do it on a rainy day.
So do we bring our
Hold on, let me.
papers?
I'll
7
check
days.
real quick.
7 days out, come on.
Yeah, but you'll get I'll give you a general idea.
Uh,
Next Thursday, high of 52 and possible rain.
fantastic, let's do it.
75.
Let's,
And it's
75%.
chance, but there's also a chance on Wednesday and
We could do it the following week too.
It's tentatively, depending on the weather.
yeah.
Is there any other place that folks want to go field trip that would be fairly reasonable distance?
You
Could
guys-
go to St. Johnsbury and see the work camp.
Can we go
You
to
can do
the,
that and easy.
can we go to the empty Waterbury site that we just paid to sign a 5-year rental agreement on that we're not gonna use? I'd love to see the place that we're paying for that no one's gonna go into.
It's because no one's gonna go back to work.
Correct. It'd just be great to see that we're spending $5 million on
They may have it out on the
a
contract.
place that.
We could get a work with
Yeah, I'd like to
BGS.
See
We
the-
work with BGS on that.
just for fun.
We could do, yeah, I don't want to do that at the same time as the
Um,
dam.
Kind of kidding.
No, are you serious?
No, I don't.
Oh, all right, okay, you're not serious.
No. Just making a
Well,
small point.
yeah, you're making a small. The board, it may end up being different.
There's no way we get to see the new forensic facility wherever it is, New Hampshire, right?
Oh,
Oh, River Valley would be fun.
You can't do, you can't go in there at all.
Oh, we can?
We're still waiting on the video.
Oh, yeah.
could we see the psychiatric festival here in Berlin? Okay, just one. This would be helpful.
I don't think you could
Yeah.
because of the
Okay.
patients.
All right. Just wanted to.
Because of the-
We got into River Valley because it was just
It was-
prior to opening. I got you.
Have you heard anything about that video
Assuming it's the same issue.
what's the video where?
of River Valley? There was a
Okay.
videographer that did a video for BGS. And BGS paid the contractor, but the contractor hasn't paid the videographer.
So,
So it's a the person's not releasing it.
oh, wow.
He hasn't been paid yet.
I mean,
I mean, the contractor was paid, but the contractor hasn't paid the person who did the
it's a
video.
local contract.
I have no idea. How far is St. Johnsbury from here? Hour, through 2.
It's more than that. Oh,
Is it more than that?
It's from to St. Jacob, it's about an hour.
Yeah.
Is there anything else around that we were looking at with BGS that we were interested in? We could do a field trip with.
You guys mentioned the Historic Society.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
We could do that. Parking there is really difficult, but we could do the Historical Society in Barry. That would be a good trip.
Oh, yeah, we're supposed to do that.
Yeah,
I want to see that.
Yeah, that's
You
That's a
had
good
suggested
trip.
that last year.
yeah,
that's a morning
Right.
trip.
yep.
We could do that.
That'd be great.
You know, it can give us lunch.
Yeah. See the new sitch out there because they redid all the grading outside. and
Rocks on the grill, it'd
Yeah.
be great.
That'd be fun though. I
Yeah.
would like to do
Oh,
that. too.
yeah, no, it's worth seeing, it's great,
Yeah.
it's a cool
What is this?
building.
Historical
The
Society.
historical.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Stephen,
and they just did a bunch of
I didn't
work.
realize St. Johnsbury was so close.
Yeah, it is close.
Yeah, St. Johnsbury's not far, it's probably under an hour from
It's like
here.
55 minutes.
Yeah.
to Academy, but I was just like, I didn't think it was that close.
Yeah,
I forget because the way it's.
I mean,
Oh, I know.
we could also do the St. Johnsbury
Yeah.
correctional facility because it has a work camp, which is structured really different. I mean, we could schedule that in
Yes, ma'am.
for a Wednesday morning, Thursday morning.
I'd love to see that.
If we could get ourselves over there earlier and get back in time for the floor, because we're gonna start and stuff on the floor.
Mhm.
For next week, or
Well, it depends what comes out. I don't wanna go and do the dam on a rainy day. It depends what comes out. Act 181. That bill is coming out at some point. If we do anything for a trip to St. Jay. Oh. you could just roll it.
Yes, information, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking Wednesday.
So do you have an
I think that might be a little bit challenging for us to facilitate. I'm gonna be out of the office. The commissioner's gonna be in human services testifying on S-193.
Yeah.
They're bringing in all the HS commissioners.
Yes, see, everything is.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be upstairs on 193 next Wednesday
Yeah,
morning.
9 to 12.
In human services,
you?
doing 193 next week, so you guys will be a little busy. So we may have some downtime as a committee, let's see, maybe if it's raining, we could do the historical society versus the dam. Cause that you can do in the morning,
Can do lunch and go.
like Thursday morning.
Yeah.
Cause we're gonna lose some people upstairs. Let's see, let's connect with both the dams and historical and
Okay.
see if next Thursday morning, well, we know it works for the dams. But if it's raining, we don't wanna do that, because it's outside. We don't wanna do that.
Yeah, I can do that, and maybe the following week is a rain date.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it would be. You know, we could even do it on a Tuesday afternoon,
Yeah,
the following week.
The dam. Yeah.
You could do that on a Tuesday afternoon.
yes.
You know, because you're usually free on Tuesday afternoons. Okay. Historical Society, Waterbury Dam, possibly sometimes St. Jay. Correctional facility, because that's a whole different structure. That one's totally different than what you've seen. And if you see St. Jay, you'll know what Rutland's like. But St. Jay also has the separate building for the work camp, and you'll see how that's structured.
So St. Jay's like Rutland and Springfield's like Newport,
Yes,
kind of.
yeah, Newport was the first one we built at a campus style where the living units
Yeah.
were separate. So it's very similar, and then Springfield was built. The only thing different, Springfield's living units were built off-site and then put
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
Whereas Newport was built right there on site, but outside of that, they're pretty much the same layout. So. Okay, anything else? Call it a wrap. I'll give you the contact info for those two folks. So let's go off of you two. We're back here tomorrow after the floor.